Good evening, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for coming and joining us for the learning of Torah Hashem, Be'ezras Hashem Yisbarach. As always, we begin with thanks to TorahAnytime.com for its worldwide platform to teach Torah in over 180 countries. And I say hello to all of you. And thank you for joining us. Also tonight, we have the rare happenstance that the global network of Kdoshim is down. But we are recording it to put it on Kdoshim as soon as it's up again, and we appreciate the global reach of Kdoshim. Torah Communications Network for carrying these shiurim, and YouTube. Our subscribers, our Zoomers, and those of you that are joining us here at our flagship station in the Agris Yisrael Beisev of Fairways Lakewood. To my subscribers, tonight we have a very special sponsor. This is a virtual sponsor who listens. Actually, it's anonymous. Thank you very much. Anonymous from Fairways, and it's being sponsored Le'ilu Nishmas Binyamin Ben Yaakov and Cyril Bas Pinchas Elio. The neshama should have a lichtige Gan Eden. They should be Melitza Yosher for their family, for all of us, and all of Klal Yisrael. We do not have a sponsor for next week's share. If anybody wants to sponsor the share, text me to 718-916-3100. That's 718-916-3100, or email me to rmmwsi@aol.com. In the second parasha of this week, we have a Torah directive, Kdoshim Gems, telling Klal Yisrael that we should be holy. Now, holy is a rarefied state. We know that Hashem is the totality of everything. And yet when the angels sing daily to Hashem, right, we know, as we describe so eloquently and poetically in our morning prayers, B'chulam Paischim as PM. They open their mouths, B'tusha, B'torah, with holiness and purity, B'shira, B'zimra, with song and melody. But what do we say? What do they say? What do they say? The highest level of angels, the Ifanim v'chayos HaKodesh. What do they say? Kadosh, 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 Hashem Tzavakos. This attribute of holiness, the rarefied attribute of holiness, which Hashem expects from us. Right? It says that we're supposed to be a mamleches kaihanim, a kingdom of priests, v'goy kadosh, a holy nation. So, what is the meaning of the directive Kdoshim Gems? So although Zohar is not something that is taught openly, Zohar is a discipline which is reserved for a special section of Talmidei Chachamim, but the Klozmer Rebbe, the Shefa Chaim, said that any Zohar that the Arizal picked to include in the discipline of Chok Yisrael is a Zohar that's meant for the general populace. In the Zohar that we learned in the Chok in the second day of Kdoshim, the Zohar says, when it says Kdoshim Gems, It means the Torah. Because Araisa, Kedusha is Kerebe. The Torah is called holy. Like it says, we heard many Gedolim who refer to the Torah and say, state in the Torah Kdoshim, in the holy Torah. And the Zohar goes on to elaborate. It says, Kdoshim tiyu ki kadosh ani Hashem. You should be holy, for I, Hashem, am holy. And says the Zohar, what does it mean you should be holy, for I, Hashem, am holy? When it says I, Hashem, it means V'da Araisa. When it says Hashem is holy, it's referring to Torah. The Ishma Kaddish Ilah, because the Torah is one of Hashem's names. Meaning, as we all know, Kutcha Barichu V'Araisa Chadu. Hashem and the Torah is one. So therefore it says we should be holy through the study of Torah. And the Zohar continues, Va'al da, and because of this, man de ishtadal ba, one who toils in the Torah, is dake, becomes purified, ulabasar is kaddish, and following that comes holiness. Kedichsiv, Kdoshim tiyu b'loshen vaday. You will be holy when you learn my Torah. And that's why by Matan Torah it says we became a Goy Kodesh, because we got the Torah. And therefore I think that that's the reason, and we're not talking about gematria here, we're talking about the very letters. If you do an anagram of the word Kedoshim, it's the same letters as Shekudim. The word Kadosh is the same letters as Shokud. It says that we're supposed to be Shokud ala Torah. We're supposed to toil and continuously labor on the Torah. And that's the way. When a person is Shokud b'Torah, he becomes a Kaddish. You know what the gematria of Kaddish is? Very simple gematria. Kuf Dalet Shin is 404. That's the same gematria as Das, the law of the Torah. Dalet Saf is 404. Also, by the way, it's the same gematria as Derur. Derur, freedom, if it's with a vav, then it's the same gematria as Kadosh, Kuf Dalet Vav Shin. And if it's Dror, Dalet Reish Dalet, it's Dalet Reish Reish. It's the same gematria as Kadosh without a vav. But why is holiness freedom? Dror means freedom, because Torah is the way for freedom, right? It says, Ein ben chayrin, ela mi sha'isik b'Torah. A person is only free when they learn the Torah. I want to drive home this message more powerfully. Already, it's several bar mitzvahs where I said this to the bar mitzvah boy. The Chidush Arim, the late Ger Rebbe, Zech Tzadik L'Bracha Schusi Yagan Aleinu, would say that if you have an old pair of tzitzis, can't wear it anymore, you could put it in a separate bag and throw it out in the garbage. Because it's a tashmish mitzvah. Tashmish mitzvah, you deal with respect, you don't put it with the chicken bones, but you can throw it out. But if you have a worn out bag of tefillin, that's a tashmish kedusha. Since the tefillin are kadosh, the bag that you put in the tefillin, that bag, when it gets worn out, you can't throw it away. It has to go in shemus. Has to be buried. It's tashmish kedusha. Says the Chidush Arim, very powerful Chidush Arim. If the bag that we put tefillin in becomes tashmish kedusha, then if we put on our tefillin in the morning And we think, I'm putting on the tefillin to remember the message of Lamantia Teres Hashem B'ficha, that I should remember to learn today. And you put it on having in mind L'zichron Zrayanatuya, to remember Hashem's outstretched arm when he slew the firstborns. That's what it says, Zrayanatuya Zuacherev. So you're putting the message of the tefillin in your brain, so then our brain becomes Tashmishe Kedusha. And if we take the tefillin and have in mind that we're putting it opposite our heart, L'shabed bezet taivas u'machshavas libeinu la'avodasai, that with my heart I will think the right thoughts. I'll have a love for my wife. I'll have a love for Hashem. I won't covet that's what's not mine. I won't harbor hate in my heart. I won't bear grudges. So then our heart becomes a Tashmish Kedusha. Now let's take that a little bit more. Of course, if the mantle, what's called in the Gemara the mitpachas of a Torah, if the mantle of a Torah gets worn out, it has to be buried. That's a Tashmishe Kedusha. So if we take the words of Torah and we put them in our heart, this is what the Zohar is saying. Kdoshim Gems da'araisa. That's the Torah. If we take the Torah and we fill our heart with Torah and our minds with Torah, that's the fulfillment of Kdoshim Gems in a very great way. But that's not the only meaning of Kdoshim Gems. It says, Daber al kol Adas b'nei Yisrael, v'amarta aleim, and you should tell them, Kdoshim Gems, you should be holy, ki kadosh ani Hashem. So the Sas Bimrasecha says, Rashi says that this mitzvah of Kdoshim Gems was a meres bahakel, was said to the entire Adas Yisrael. Now that's Chiddush, because we would think that the rarefied levels of being a Kaddish, for example, the Ramban says Kaddish is Kadesh Atzmecha B'mutarlach, to separate from even that which is permitted. We would think that this parsha is reserved to the elite, to the Balei Madrega, to those that are already developed, not for the populace, but to the contrary. It says, Taber al kol adas b'nei Yisrael. Tell everybody. So he says an interesting thing. He says, look at the Rashi Tevis, at the first letters of Kdoshim Gems, Ki Kadosh. So Kdoshim is a kuf, that's 100. Gems is 400, so that's 500. Ki is chaf, that's 20, that's 520. And Kadosh is another 100, that's 620. He says those are the 613 mitzvahs d'oraisa and the 7 mitzvahs d'rabbanan. 620 is gematria keser, crown. The crown of Yiddishkeit is the 620, the 613 mitzvahs d'oraisa and the 7 mitzvahs d'rabbanan. He says each one enables us to have kedusha. Before every mitzvah we say, Asher kidshanu b'mitzvaysav. You sanctified us with our mitzvahs. Each one, every person to do a mitzvah and receive Kedusha. Rav Steinman once told somebody, it's not only, Kedusha doesn't only come from doing something positive. Kedusha also comes from avoiding doing something negative. That's what we said, 613. Of the 613, there's 365 los haseh. It's 365 things that we're not supposed to do. Steinman says, even if somebody is working on something, and for 2 days he didn't do it, and the third day he fell. He said, but for 2 days he was a Kaddish. The fact that he held back for 2 days, that's Kedusha. Kedusha is, it's something that's available to Kol Adas Yisrael, something that's available to everybody. Somebody came to the great Rebbe Avram Matisyahu Mishtefanesht. I think this was the Rimnitzer Rebbe's Rebbe. We know how great the Rimnitzer Rebbe was. Anybody that read the article on Rimnitzer Rebbe, if you didn't read it, you should hurry up. You shouldn't pass go. You shouldn't collect $200. You should get it and read it. But anybody read it, so you can imagine the Rimnitzer Rebbe's Rebbe. So somebody came to Rabbi Avram Matisyahu Mishtefanesht and said that he needs a bracha that he shouldn't be drafted into the Roman army. So the Rebbe looked at him and said, why don't you want to be drafted? You're afraid that in the army you're going to have to be Mechalel Shabbos? So the man looked at him and admitted, no, I'm a Mechalel Shabbos now. So then the Rebbe said to him, so you don't want to be drafted because you're afraid that you're going to have to not eat kosher? So the man said, no, I don't eat kosher now. So the Rebbe didn't blast him. The Rebbe said to him, so why don't you want to be drafted? So he says, I have an old mother, and I take care of her. And if I'm drafted, there'll be nobody to take care of her. So the Rebbe said, in the schus of taking care of your mother, you'll have an open miracle, and they'll say you're not fit for the army. And so it was. There's a lesson there. The great Rebbe of Stefanesh saw Kedusha in this person with his kiyum of kibbut avein, even though he's a Mechalel Shabbos, and even though he didn't eat kosher. I'll give you another example about this. Somebody came to Reb Shloimke Mizvil, and he said that he wants to become a Baal Tshuva. But there's something that he can't do. It's not physically possible for him not to smoke on Shabbos. So he wants to be accepted about tshuva, but he doesn't want to hear about not smoking on Shabbos. So of course we know that the person is not, it's not supposed to be makabel the Torah except for one thing. So what did Reb Shloimke Mizavil tell him? Such a lesson. He told him, before you smoke on Shabbos, I want you to wait 3 seconds till you smoke. So that I could do. And from those 3 seconds, he stopped smoking. Didn't happen right away. But from those 3 seconds, he said, okay, 3 seconds, maybe I could go a few minutes. And from those 3 seconds, Kedusha comes even in little packages. And Kedusha is not just what we do. Kedusha is what we don't do. That's also Kedusha. Remember I told you that the Gaon, in the famous Igeres Hagra, says, in what merit will we be zeichet to the Oragonas, to the hidden light in the next world? The hidden light is the one thing that Hashem said, He created a whole world with all of its beauties, and He didn't hide it from the Rishon. So He didn't hide the Alps from the Rishon, He didn't hide the Riviera from the Rishon, He didn't hide beautiful women from the Rishon. But one thing, He saw that the Ar was good, so He separated it. Rashi says, so that the Rishon shouldn't have it. That's the Aragonas. That's how great it is. The Gaon says, how will we merit the Aragonas? Amazing. You would think learning Torah is Ar. No. How do you merit the Aragonas? Every moment where you could say Lashon Hara, you don't say it, you merit the Aragonas. You see, Kedusha comes not just in what we do, it comes in what we don't do. As we said, Kdoshim Tiyu Ki Kadosh is Rosh Hashanah 620. Of those 620, more than half is what we don't do. 365 Lois Haseis. Reb Noach Weinberg, I made a bracha already, Rabbi say. That's the real thing.
Yes. I thought you would like that.
Talk about that in a minute. But Rav Noach Weinberg said an interesting thing. When it came to saving Sdom v'Amorah, Avram Avinu failed. Lot succeeded in saving one of the 5 cities. And since Rav Miller said, I don't know where Rav Miller got this from, but we could rely on Rav Miller. Rav Miller said the 5 cities of Sdom v'Amorah had 3 million people. So one of the 5 cities, Tzayar, for sure had hundreds of thousands of people. If it would have been for Avram, they would have been killed. They would have been sulfurized. They would have been nuked. But Lot succeeded where Avram failed. So Reb Noach Weinberg said, how could that be? How could that be? Avram Avinu failed. Lot, he succeeded? So Reb Noach Weinberg, Zech Tzak L'Vrachas, Chussi Yagan Aleinu, says, Avram said, Hashem, save them if there's tzaddikim. 50 tzaddikim, 40 tzaddikim, 30 tzaddikim, 20 tzaddikim, 10 tzaddikim. There weren't 10 tzaddikim. Lot said, save Tzayar because ki mitzari. It has less averis. Can be saved by what you didn't do. Not what you did do. It says that Tzayar, the city was founded a year later than Sdom v'Amorah. So its sins weren't that many. Lot saved Tzayar because he didn't pray for righteousness. He prayed for what they didn't do. There's value in what a person doesn't do. It's a tremendous lesson in Yiddishkeit. We get rewarded for what we don't do. We have a Friday and we didn't get angry. Woo, big thing. You're in shul, you didn't talk, big thing. So what big thing? I mean, yeah, it's a big thing. There's Kedusha in what we don't do. Talk about shul. Well, first of all, let me tell you an interesting story. There was a woman, the Eitzes Penina at Torah brings this story. I'm not familiar with But there's a cat disease. You ever hear of a cat disease that causes women to miscarry? It's called shachefes chasulim. It's a type of infectious disease from cats that causes a woman to miscarry. There's this woman that caught it and had miscarriage after miscarriage after miscarriage. Now, actually, we spoke about this in Tazria Mitzayra. The Chavetz Chaim in the Shmiras HaLashon says that a person who speaks Lashon Hara, the Zayar says it's called Mitzayra Muzger, because once tefillah is put on a lock, they're locked out because of that Lashon Hara. So she decided that since she gossips, maybe that's why Hashem is not listening to her tefillahs. So she decided that she's going to have a zero tolerance to Lashon Hara. And the next time she was sitting with her friend, and her friend said, "You got to hear this latest scoop." She said, "Please, I want to have another baby, and I'm afraid that Hashem is not listening to my tefillah, so I'm being extra cautious. I don't want to hear any Lashon Hara." And she had another baby. Not because she did something, because she didn't do something. That's also Kedusha. Now we know, I'm going to share with you another element of Kedusha. This year we're going to learn different elements of Kedusha. We know that our shul is considered a mikdash ma'at. It's a mini sanctuary. It says today, after the Churban, where is the Shechina? The Shechina is in our Bati Knesios and Bati Midrashos, where we call a mikdash ma'at. It says mikdashi tiro. We're supposed to have a reverence for the place which we daven. In Belgium, there was a great Rebbe known as Rav Itzikel. Rav Itzikel passed away. He had a son-in-law, Reb Leizer, and Reb Leizer's son is the current great Rebbe in Belgium. His name is Rav Leibish. Very, very great Rebbe. One of his Hasidim was Reb Pinchas Weinstock. Zeichet Tzadik L'Bracha, Schus Yogam Aleinu. Reb Pinchas Weinstock was 92 years old. And he came to Reb Leibish for a bracha of Arichas Yom. Now that sounds a little, strange. You're 92 and you want a bracha for Arichas Yom, but that's what they say. When you have a good thing, you want more of it. So Pinchas Weinstock was a Ehrlich Yid. He wanted to live longer. So he asked Reb Leibish for a bracha. So Reb Leibish said to him, Reb Pinchas, the furniture in the main Beis HaMedrash is getting old. We need new furniture in the main Beis HaMedrash. So Reb Pinchas told the Rebbe, your wish is my command. I'll refurnish the Beis HaMedrash. Now, Reb Pinchas didn't have the money to refurnish a whole Beis HaMedrash. Big Beis HaMedrash in Belgium. So a 92-year-old man goes to the bank and takes a loan. And he furnishes the Beis HaMedrash. He lived till 103. He passed away on the day of his last payment to the bank. True story. So attaching himself and honoring the place of Kedusha gave him Kedusha. You think it's just a cute acronym, that Seva, hoary old age, is an acronym of Shtiki Yafa B'Shas HaTfilah. Quiet isn't good in the time of davening. Person respects and has reverence for the place of holiness. That's Moisif Kedusha to his life. Okay, now we're going to talk about a more difficult subject. You see, the Ramban, the Heilige Ramban, one of the premier, together with Rashi, one of the premier Pirushim on the Chumash, the Ramban translates Kdoshim to you as Prushim to you. You should practice abstinence. Right? Kedusha means separate. Like a person says to a woman under the chuppah, Hariyat Mekudeshesli, that means you're separated to me and forbidden to the rest of the world. So Kdoshim Tiyu, says the Ramban, is Kadesh Atzmacha B'mutalach. You should separate yourself from even that which is permitted. Otherwise, you could end up fulfilling the whole Torah and be a novel Bereshus HaTorah. You know? At 9 o'clock, you have a latte. At 10 o'clock, you have strawberries and whipped cream. At 11 o'clock, you have pickled herring. And you go through the day. There's tequila hour, right? There's cocktails. There's franks and blankets, right? There's all kinds of, and that's only the food department. There's all kinds of departments. Now, Rav Moshe Wolfson says that we know that right after it says Kdoshim Tiyu, it says Ish Imay v'aviv tiro v'shapsoisei tishmoy. So Rav Moshe Wolfson says, a person says, but I don't want to miss out on the pleasures. So Rav Moshe Wolfson says, don't worry, the reward for Kdoshim Tiyu is, first of all, your children will honor you, and you'll get tremendous delight from that. And secondly, you have Shabbos, where you're allowed to have Einig. You'll have many delights. You'll have Kokosh on Shabbos, and Shalent and Kishka on Shabbos. There's a lot of, and Yom Tov, there'll be plenty of times to have delight. Now, I'm going to first tell you something scary. They used to say over in the Slobodka Yeshiva, I don't know, people maybe that learned regularly by Rav Miller, maybe heard Rav Miller say that. I never heard Rav Miller say this. But they say it over from the Chazon Ish, that the Chazon Ish said, the sages that wrote the awesome Ksais HaChoshen and the Nesivos HaMishpat, which is studied in depth by the greatest Talmidei Chachamim in the yeshivas all over the world, if they would have enjoyed one Shabbos kugel, they wouldn't have been able to write these holy svarim. They would have enjoyed one Shabbos kugel. That's a Shabbos kugel. I'll tell you one other story. This is from the great Chidah. The Chidah is one of the authors of the Chakli Yisrael. He instituted the last two disciplines. The first six were instituted by the Arizal. The last two, the Musar and the Halacha, was instituted by the Chidah. The Chidah says that at his time, somebody surfaced who looked very pious and started revealing the future to people. And he was saying things that happened. So the Chidah said that someone went to the great tzaddikim, one of the great tzaddikim of the Chidah's time, and if the Chidah called him a great tzaddik, then he had to be a great, great tzaddik. And he asked him about this person. Can they rely on him? So the tzaddik said he doesn't know, but he'll give them a test. They should go and see how he eats. They came back and said he eats with a lot of taiva, a lot of desire. So the tzaddik says, the Chidah brings us down, the tzaddik says, then what he is doing is not mesitra the kedusha. It's not coming from the side of holiness, it's coming from the side of tumah. Now, we're not on this level. I say this as I'm drinking real Pepsi. We're not on this level. Although I once heard that Rav Shlomo Freifeld saw somebody who was upset that they didn't get the right kind of soda for Yom Tov. And it distressed him greatly that somebody could be distressed about that. But as Reb Miller said, for us, it's just keeping back from the last piece of dessert, or waiting a few moments before we eat that dessert, like the 3 seconds with the smoking. But I want to elaborate on this more, because you see, on the one hand, Rav Wolfson said that the reward is the Shabbos food, which is okay. Yet for the Chazon Ish said that the rarefied, we can't even begin to imagine these people, the rarefied ksais didn't have benefit even from one Shabbos kugel. So I want to tell you a Maisa with the great Reb Shloimke Mizavil. We quoted from him already tonight. I want to tell you a Maisa. We'll start putting this in perspective. Maybe for our levels, at least for myself. Because, I told people many times that I don't speak about things that are far from my level. So I want to tell you, I enjoy a Frankfurter. And I enjoy a good piece of babka, and I enjoy a latte. So, but yet I feel comfortable to speak about this. So I want to tell you why, but I want to develop it. There was a Maisa with Reb Shloimke Mizavil that somebody came to him and said to him that he's bereft of a child for many, many, many years. Could the Rebbe give him a bracha to have a child? So the Rebbe said to him, you love to schmooze. Curtail your schmoozing. What we call shooting the breeze. Curtail your schmoozing and you'll have a child. So the man did just that, and he was blessed with a child. So afterwards, he came back to the Rebbe, and he said to Rebbe, it worked like a charm, but I don't understand. I was makbid on saying Lashon, not saying Lashon Hara. I never said nivel peh. What was the eitzah not to shmooze? So the Rebbe told him, I know you loved the schmoozing. You had a lot of pleasure. A person in life has a quota of pleasure. You were getting all your pleasure from your schmoozing. There was no room left for the pleasure of a child. When you curtailed your other pleasure, you left room for the pleasure of a child. Now this is rather a very big novelty, this idea. And there's a similar mimer from the very great Reb Pinchas Mikritz. Rav Pinchas Mikaritz quotes a Gemara in Masechtas Avodah Zarah, Daf Yud Ches Amud Beis. We'll get there very soon. This year in the Daf HaYomi. The Gemara says, Kol hamitzloites mezaynos of mismaten. Whoever is a cynic and a scoffer, Hashem will diminish his livelihood. So Rav Pinchas Mikaritz says, what's pshat? So he says again, this person drew a lot of pleasure with his litzanos. He attracted a crowd, he had admirers, and that pleasure diminished his merit to the point where the pleasure of having a livelihood, there was no room for it yet anymore. Now, this idea needs study. Does this mean that if somebody gets joy from learning, it's going to diminish his ability to have other joys? Of course not. Just like it says that a person has a certain amount of words, and when he uses up the words, he dies. But the words that he says of Torah, the words that he says of prayer, the words that he says praising his wife, those don't diminish. And therefore it's the same thing in the allotment of pleasure. That certainly permitted pleasures will not diminish the allotment. A scoffer, yes, you're not supposed to be a scoffer. You're not supposed to be a batlan. You know, it says, there's a mitzvah sasei d'oraisa, v'dibarta bam, you should speak about the Torah, and the Medrash says, v'dibarta bam, v'loi b'dvarim b'teilim. So just a shmooze. But let's say a person plays pickleball, and he enjoys it. Is that going to deduct from his quota of enjoyment that maybe it's going to affect his livelihood? If a person does it to relax his mind, if a person does it in order that he shouldn't be obese, it should keep him trim, it's a mitzvah. Same thing is true, a person enjoys a good 8 hours of sleep. That's certainly not going to deduct from his life, from his pleasures. Because he's sleeping in order to be able to learn better the next morning. He's sleeping in order to be able to concentrate on his davening. He's sleeping in order he shouldn't be cranky with his wife or with her husband. And I believe the same thing is true with eating. If a person eats, and because they're eating, they learn better. I know that before I said the daf tonight, I went out with my wife, and we ate in bun. I actually saw you there.
I didn't see you, but I was
Yeah.
My wife saw you.
Ate in bun.
No, I wasn't.
And I ate with my wife. And because I ate, I said the Mishnah Yaimis, the daf, and this year much better. I believe that eating is not going to deduct anything. A person washes to be able to bench, to do 3 mitzvahs d'oraisa and 1 mitzvah d'rabbanan. There's a lot of thought that should go into eating, into sleeping. And then I believe that it doesn't deduct from anything. And it's not a detraction of Kdoshim Gems. So Kdoshim Gems is an attitude, how to do. Perhaps that's also included in the words Kadesh Atzmecha B'Mutar Lach. Kadesh Atzma doesn't only mean separate, it means Kadesh Atzmacha b'mutulach. When you're engaged in the mutulach, do it with a Kedusha. I once heard from the Skalya Rebbe, Shlita, that the Litvaks translate Barasi Yetzar, Barasi Torah Tavnallah. Hashem created the Yetzar and He created the Torah as an antidote to it. The Torah is an antidote against the Yetzar, which is certainly true. But he says the Hasidim have an alternate pshat. Barasi Yetzar, Barasi Torah Tavlana. The Torah is the spice to it. Because we take the Yetzirah that wants us to eat, that wants us to play, and the Torah is the spice that sweetens it and makes it proper. Now, of course, it depends on the level of the person. So, as the Chazon Ish said, the level of the Balak Sais and the Baal Nesivas is they didn't need even the geschmack of one Shabbos kugel. They didn't need it. Same thing is true. Reb Yaakov Kamenetsky, one of the Gedolei Yisrael, used to pick up chess games in Oshraga with the people in Oshraga in his 90s. On the other hand, my Rebbe Ramosha stopped playing chess at the age of 8. So already at the age of 8, he didn't need the mental relaxation of playing a game of chess. To the contrary, he got his mental relaxation by opening up a sefer. Torah Hashem Tamima Meshivas Nefesh. Torah Hashem is perfect, it rejuvenates the soul. But it depends on what level you are on. If the game of chess relaxes your nerves and you're a better person because of it, then that's not a stira to Kdoshim to you. Now, we explained from the Zohar that Kdoshim to you is through the Torah, right? The Torah HaKadosh. Therefore, you have to be careful that the Torah should not be diminished from the Torah itself. Its Kedusha should not be diminished. What do I mean by that? So it's interesting. I knew a great Talmid Chacham who, when he wrote a commentary on the Torah, he had in the background a radio opened with a baseball game. And I always wondered if that's proper. After a baseball game, there's nothing negative about the baseball game. But while writing the Torah commentary, he had on the background the WFAN. He was listening to a baseball game. I wondered about it. So today, I saw in the Sefer Sos B'Imrasecha a quote of a Maisa from Rabbi Shlomo Levenstein. Rabbi Shlomo Levenstein, I feel a kinship with him because he did the Shiurim on Chok Yisrael in Hebrew. Reb Mechel Zilber did it in Yiddish. Rabbi Shlomo Levenstein did it in Hebrew, and I'm trying to do it in English. And we did already more than half the Torah already, but it's a huge job. I mean, I'm working on it already over 4 years. But these people did it already. Shlomo Levenstein, Sir Shlomo Levenstein, who wrote, who knows how many, 16, 18 volumes of Moshe Ka'or. Sir Shlomo Levenstein brings down this Peledic Maisa. You see how You got to be very careful with the purity of Kedushas HaTorah. It's maybe the Gemaisa. Said there was a Haredi family in Eretz Yisrael. They had no technology in the house whatsoever. All of a sudden, their bar mitzvah boy developed a desire for Goyish Nigunim, for Goyish songs. They didn't know where it came from. There were no Goyish songs in their house, and they monitored the homes that their child went to. They didn't know, where did he develop such a desire to listen to Goyish songs? So they went with the boy to Reb Chaim Kanievsky. Chaim Kanievsky looked at them. You know, Reb Chaim Kanievsky, the Shechina was medaber metoich greinai. We know that with the scores of people that came to him, people asked him the same question, and different people got the different answers for the same question. It's mamish Shechina medaber metoich greinai. Those that read about him know mamish was like. So anyway, they asked Reb Chaim. Reb Chaim said, "Go to the cipher who wrote this boy's tefillin. I think you'll find the answer to the riddle." So they went to the cipher. The cipher was an Erlich Yid, and they asked the cipher. And the cipher's face turned pale. He says, "I think I know what Reb Chaim means. You see, I live in Ashdod, and they were shooting missiles at Ashdod. And therefore I wanted to hear the red alert when we had to go into the safe room. So while I was writing the tefillin, I put on the radio. I put it low. But it was a station that was playing Goyish music. So while I was writing his tefillin, I was listening to the Goyish music. I didn't put it on to listen to the Goyish music. I put it on to hear the red alert. But I had to, when I was writing his tefillin, I was listening to Goyish music. That's Kedusha's tefillin. Kedusha is. So I'll give you another example of this. So to understand how far this goes, Rab Mordechai Shulman, the Rosh Yeshiva of the Sabotki Yeshiva, somebody came to him and offered him a huge amount of money. In those days, I don't know what a huge amount of money, maybe 100,000, 200,000 shekalim. He turned him down. So Reb Zilberstein asked, how could he turn down so much money? He says, this person's hashkafas are not good. I'm afraid if I bring this money into the yeshiva, it's going to affect the boy's learning. Gotta be careful with the money that comes. You can't take tray for money. It's going to have an impact on the Kedushas HaTorah of the boys. Really, really an amazing thing. They show you the other way around. The Rabbi Fol Cook, who today is a very great tzaddik, the son, the son of Reb David Cook, on a trip to Bnei Brak, he lost his tefillin. He was very upset. He's a young boy. He lost his tefillin. So Reb Chaim Kanievsky, who was friendly with Reb David Cook, says, I have the stipler, Reb Chaim's father's tefillin. I have the stipler Gain's tefillin in the house. Why should it be sitting in the closet? Your son could use it. And as soon as Reb David Cook started wearing the stipler Shlita's tefillin, he started in a meteoric way jumping in Kedusha. Now, there's time yet to talk about, although this is a subject that we could talk about the whole year. Am Kedoshecha embraces so many missions. Before I do, I want to again thank our anonymous donor, Le'ilui Nishmas Ben Yamin Ben Yaakov, and Cyril Bas Pinchas Eliyahu. The neshama should have a great aliyah. Be Melitza Yoshe for their family, their wonderful Choshev Torah aristocracy family. And if you would like to sponsor a shir, which is heard all over the world, by well over 500 people every week, well over. 718-916-3100, rmmwsi@aol.com. So the great Rav Shimon Shkop, in his monumental work, Shara Yosher, in the preface to the Sefer, says another angle to the Torah mandate, Kdoshim to you. He says, any time we do something, litovas hazulas, any time we do something of a selfless nature, which benefits another, that's a fulfillment of Kdoshim to you. And he says when we do something of a selfless nature, besides fulfilling the mitzvah of Gemilas Chasadim and V'alachta B'drachav, in walking in Hashem's ways of Mahu Racham, Afata Racham, Mahu Chanan, Afata Chanan, just like He's merciful, you should be merciful. Just like He's gracious, we should be gracious. It's also a fulfillment of Kdoshim to you. And that's why the Torah says, Lo tov heyosa adam levada. It's not good for a man to be alone. Now, actually, it's very good to be alone. You're tired, you can go to sleep. You're cold, you can put on the heat. You're hot, you can put on the air conditioner. All of a sudden, you're living with someone else, you can do whatever you want. But it's not good, because if you live alone, then you're wrapped up in the world of me, myself, and I, the big three. And that's not Kedusha. Kedusha is living l'toivas hazulas. Some Sefer says the idea that whatever you do, you should think, how could I benefit someone else what I'm doing? Now, when you're married, that's easy. You go to the drawer to get yourself your silverware. You bring for your spouse silverware too. You go to the refrigerator to get a drink. You get a drink for your spouse. So that's injecting Kedusha in everything that you do. Now, the mandate of Kdoshim to you, says Reb Shimon Shkop, is that we should look at every area of what we do. Where can we inject that it shouldn't be just self-centered? So when you're davening, daven for somebody else as well. Now it could be start with a spouse. It could start with children. It could start with parents. But it doesn't have to stop there. Train ourselves whenever we hear Kaddish Aleinu, it's our whole kehillah. Then we could say it's our community. Then we could say it's the global Jewish community. A person is learning. Learning is a very big schus. So you could sit down and learn and say, I know somebody is sick, let me have them in mind. You could say, I know that somebody is out of a job, let me have them in mind. All of these things are an aspect of Kdoshim to you, of being Gekaddish. Now, Achrei Mos got a little shafted tonight. But don't worry, we still have for the Shabbos table. And hopefully when we speak about for the Shabbos table, we'll give a little attention to Achrei Mos. Again, we want to remind you that we do learn Daf Yomi. Next week it's going to be at 8:35. And you come on by going to zoomdaf.com and putting in meeting code, all capital letters, my initials, RMMW, Rabbi Moshe Meir Weiss. To sponsor a share, 718-916-3100, rmmwsi@aol.com. Thank you for joining us. Have a good night and a good Shabbos.